Streaming wars, cinematic universes, and 21st century Disney. We are predicting 2018 in entertainment right here on Screen Junkies News. Welcome to Screen Junkies News. I'm Roth Cornet, and I am joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Billy Business.
Always happy to be here.
And I am so delighted to have Mr. Patrick Shanley from The Hollywood Reporter joining us today. We are going to talk about big predictions for movies and entertainment in general in 2018. And we are delighted to have your expertise here because we have a lot to talk about. It's been a big year. Looks like it's going to be an even bigger one if question number one comes to fruition. We are taping this for the record on Friday, December the 8th. So by the time we are done taping this question may be answered. But we will get into the further implications about the seemingly right around the corner, the ink is almost dry deal between Fox and Disney and the larger implications of that deal, which are pretty massive. So let's break it down bit by bit.
To say the least.
to say the very least. Now, we'll say that probably one of the biggest questions for our fans is, how will this impact the MCU, which the current iteration is ending with Infinity War 2, and Kevin Feige's contract is up next year. Right. What do you foresee?
Well, it's a really interesting question. If people haven't been following this, if you don't know where the studio's rights lie, obviously Disney owns the Marvel Universe that we all know and love, the MCU. Fox is responsible for the Fantastic Four, which less people probably love based on the movies, and also the XMen movies, which has, ups and downs in there. If Fox was to be acquired by Disney, obviously that begs the question, what is going to happen to the X-Men and what is going to happen with the Fantastic Four? If that's the case, could they be folded into the MCU as we know it now? We know going forward with the phase 3 of what we're in with the MCU, we are seeing an enormous cast of characters in the Marvel Universe. We might see even more going forward. And it begs the question, what's going to happen to the people that we already know? It's not just Feige's contract that is coming up, but a lot of our favorite heroes are also coming up at the end of it. Are they going to be replaced with other heroes? Are we going to recast certain roles? A lot of questions are coming up, and it begs the question, there's so many X-Men. How do the X-Men fit into a universe that's already so chock full of everybody?
I guess following up on that really quickly, and I don't know how you feel about this, Billy, one of the things that I've been thinking about is just structurally in terms of, do they integrate all under one banner under Kevin Feige? I don't see him staying past this contract, but now perhaps with this new challenge ahead, would that change the situation? I don't know what you guys think.
Also interesting too, because Marvel has kind of been this own kind of branch outside of Disney, even though it's under the umbrella. But then something like Fox's X-Men was just under the umbrella of 20th Century Fox, just films in general. There's no X-Men kind of branch. How would you even start to, and again, this is a prediction show, so this is all speculative, but 100%. How would you begin to kind of integrate such a massive project? Does it stay its own thing? Does it just kind of fall under this Marvel branch? How would you go about organizing that?
Am I like an executive?
Or just using your best educated guess?
Sure. My guess would be is that they're going to have to kill off some characters. I think we already are assuming that's going to be happening in these late phase Marvel movies. It's getting too crowded. We can only watch these on an IMAX screen at this point. There's too many characters on screen. I think the best way, if I was to do it, is use somebody like Deadpool who can break a fourth wall anyway. You have this amazing character who is literally made as a bridge between universes. Why not use him? He's a very beloved character at this point. We'll see how well received Deadpool 2 is going to be when it comes out. But I think utilizing characters like Deadpool to try and bridge the gap between these characters would be the best way of going about it. I also don't think you need to do it, honestly. I do not think that the X-Men have to be inside the MCU. They can exist as their own thing, continuing on forward. There's pros and cons to both sides of that argument, I suppose. I would like to see Wolverine, whoever is going to play him in the future, besides Captain America next to Spider-Man. Who wouldn't want to see that? But at the same time, they're much different films. They don't have that same Marvel formula that we see in all the Marvel movies. And I'm not knocking that formula. I think it's a great formula. I think they do it to perfection. I just think that the X-Men, they tell much different stories. It's not a big bad who appears in each X-Men film. They deal more with social issues. They're almost a more adult version of superheroes. And they have been since they were first introduced I think it was the 70s, 80s. I'm not exactly sure when the...
Actually, the X-Men were all the way back in the 60s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So a perfect time for them to exist, right?
I mean, it's interesting just on and this is the last thing I'll start to speculate on this, just from a structural inside of the studio perspective. Bob Iger's contract was up, I believe, in 2019, and he said now he will likely stay, or it has been reported that he will likely stay if this deal goes through, to marshal it forward. Feige's contract was going to be up in 2018. There was rampant speculation that would he then step into Iger's position, which never really seemed to make sense in my mind because he's such a creative guy.
Right.
What then does he do? You know, does he stay? Does he want to take on this? Or is it sort of like, mic drop, I did a perfect thing and now
takes
I'm
a vacation
done.
at this point.
I think it literally does a mic drop all as well. Yeah.
Right? You know, but then at that point, who's steering that ship? That's a very unwieldy ship.
Well, here's a really interesting wrinkle to that, because the Murdochs are also involved, and
Yeah.
the Murdoch sons are around the same age as Feige. Wouldn't they be stepping into one of these roles of Iger if Iger's going to leave? I find it hard to believe that Fox would get in, with lack of a better term, get in bed with Disney if the Murdochs are not also going to have a big seat at that table. I don't think they're trying to concede power here. I think they're trying to
Consolidate it?
Yeah, I guess so. That's a better way to put it. They obviously are going to be big players going forward. I think we know that about the Murdochs. I think that's how they were able to become what they are, particularly Rupert. This is not them stepping out of the show. This is them stepping up in a bigger way than I think they already are.
So one aspect that, you know, we've been talking a lot about movies, Fantastic Four, X-Men, and all that stuff, but one thing that we're not, or a lot of people aren't necessarily talking about a lot, is the television side of things. Now that Disney kind of has already had kind of a stake in Hulu, and so does Fox, if they take that over, is this just a Netflix killer? I mean, what is the TV side of all this look like if this goes through?
God, that's the most interesting question to me, actually. Hulu's bizarre because a lot of these networks own different parts of Hulu. I believe, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure if Fox and Disney team up, then they will be majority holders of Hulu. And that may very well be a Netflix killer. We're already seeing that Netflix is not impervious to competition. It is pervious to competition. Is pervious a word? I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of impervious?
Yeah.
Super pervious.
Super pervious.
I make up words I think it's on my business card, makes up words.
Yeah. Wordsmith.
Wordsmith.
Yeah, great writers coin phrases all the time. So we are seeing that Netflix is not bulletproof. If two enormous companies like Fox and Disney come together and they aim their sights at Netflix, well, then it's very possible that they could take it down, particularly if they're going to lose all their Disney properties. Pixar's not going to be at Netflix anymore. Marvel properties won't be at Netflix. This is a huge blow to them. I don't think it can be understated just how important those properties are to Netflix, even as they roll out more and more IPs.
How would this affect the plan, Disney's streaming service, right? So do they just go, is it a 1-2 punch between that sort of more focused streaming service and Hulu to just, would the goal then be, let's take down Netflix and period, that's all we're trying to do? Or is it further consolidation?
That's a great question. I guess at this point it's all speculation,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
I don't know. I'm not a businessman. I'm not sure if they are building a battleship with the sole intention of ruthlessly taking down another company. Not even ruthlessly, just doing that as their goal. But I do think, I mean, it's a business. They want to compete, obviously, and they would like to win. If you're going to compete, you want to win. I think that a lot of places are taking aim at Netflix, and I don't know what Netflix's future is, particularly if you throw Apple into the mix. And how does
Which
Apple?
we will.
Right? Yeah,
We're
I
getting
don't want to
there.
jump the gun. But yeah, we'll see. If this happens, I wonder if that lights a fire under Apple to try and make a decision on Netflix, because it's going to be much stiffer competition if you bring Fox and Disney together in terms of streaming and what that means for TV.
Then we have a fight.
A lot of studios are kind of in a weird spot right now, just because the entertainment industry is changing. Another one that people are talking about is Paramount lost $1 billion in funding. Could they be in a similar situation? Do you think in 2018 we might see news stories of someone trying to swoop in and take Paramount? Could we see one or two just like mega studios?
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't see that, right? It stands to reason that would be something that would happen. We've also seen that. Let's look back, and this is a completely different situation because Marvel was successful even before Disney acquired them, and their IP, not just the studio. But if you were to be taken over by something that's already proven that they're hit makers, I think that almost behooves you, even if you are Paramount. It almost seems, I don't want to make it so hyperbolic that this is like their only way to survive. They had a bad year. They can obviously bounce back with other things. But I think aligning yourself with a more successful business is not a bad business practice. And I also don't foresee it happening in 2018, but I do foresee it happening in the future, especially if the trend continues for a studio like Paramount.
It would be interesting to see what would that even be, because if you look at it, right, so who even has the buying power to do that at this point? Paramount certainly took a big hit financially this year, and they only have, I think, 5% of the box office. But who can step in? Not Sony, really, right?
Certainly not.
Certainly
Sony.
not, right? So what would that even be is my curiosity. It just feels like we're watching the emergence of a total shift in the studio systems.
Right. Oh, it might be just like it was 70, 80 years ago. It might be the end of a studio system as we know it, and moving forward into a new era of different studios. Are they going to be super studios, like you said? Are we going to see breakouts of much smaller studios? Because it was also a big year for independent film, a very big year for independent film. And I think that is attractive to a lot of places as well, is the catering to filmmakers, or to see such a huge return on investment in films like Get Out, or even a film like It, which had a modest budget but not a large budget. And you can see that you can make so much money without these humongous well-known IPs is a way to do it.
Well, spoiler alert, we had a question about that, but I guess we'll get to that now.
Oh no, I keep spoiling it.
Well, actually, before we get there, I do want to piggyback off all this. You're talking about smaller studios. We're now seeing like WWE is throwing their hat in the ring in terms of broadening kind of their appeal. Do you see any other companies that kind of are specifically niche in one area broadening up in 2018 or even beyond to try to kind of compete more in this kind of content race? Who can provide the most content?
Possibly. I can't give like specific examples, but I do know that, like you said with WWE, let's talk about the YouTube space.
Sure.
Why not?
Why not? Here we are.
That's another interesting example of these types of things. You're already getting millions of viewers. You can get lots of revenue is coming in. You're reaching large audiences. Why not try to get into this space by yourself and try to broaden that out? I do think that we live in an age now. It's never easy, but I do think there's the possibility for you to strike it out independently and have much more success than you would have previously. It's funny to see that we simultaneously live in that time and also the time of there being massive mega studios looming.
Yeah.
It's an odd dichotomy, but it seems to be what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and we'll just go there now because here we are organically, is that idea of, if you look at something like Girls Trip, right, which is a mid-range film that had a very good return on investment, Get Out had the highest return on investment this year, but even something like Coco, which is at a higher level indeed, and Logan were lower risk in relative terms, right, and worked. So is it possible that we do see a really big divide of this 21st century Disney, on one side just sort of pumping out huge franchise films, and then on the other side, maybe, although Logan and Coco both belong to those studios, something that's offering alternative programming that is at a lower investment and potentially higher reward, and maybe just more creative original films?
Well, I mean, the common thread between all of those is that they're good films.
They're good movies, but there are good movies that people don't go see too.
That's very true too, and it's reductive to say, oh, people will see good movies. We obviously know that's not true. There's lots of great movies that people don't see. I could cite a couple that are personally very close to me.
Feel free to cite one right now.
They're old.
Okay.
Well, Blade Runner 2049
sure,
was
that's a great
one that was,
exactly.
Certainly not a hit.
No, I mean, that was also closer to a big budget film than a middling film, but still,
it was I think it was like $150 million art film.
Right. Yeah, which is unheard of to do something like that. And plus, you have one of the greatest artists working right now working on it with Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Okay, much better.
I had
to. This is years of practice, by the way. I heard it in its raw form to today. It has evolved.
It's a finely honed machine by the time we get there.
And then I'll probably get a correction somewhere in these comments, I imagine.
I do think that a lot of bigger studios are reaching out to auteurs to make their films. The MCU is a great example of this. Smaller filmmakers who made very well-received critically, indie films, and now they're giving them the reins to these humongous franchises. Let's look at Thor Ragnarok's a good example. I love Taika Waititi. I might be mispronouncing his name. I apologize.
Taika Waititi.
You are the name Smith. I love it. I need you on all my interviews in the future. He was a wonderful indie filmmaker who makes these very, very charming, smaller indie films, this is a humongous opportunity for any filmmaker, and he knocked it out of the park. Not just in terms of the movie that he made, but also in terms of the return on investment that they got. Even though this was a huge, huge movie, it still made tons of money. It's on its way to $1 billion. It might be very, very close to it as I'm speaking right now. But I do think that there seems to be a cross between the two, where indie filmmakers are not just staying in the realm of indies. They're also kind of being attracted to these bigger budget things because they have more opportunity to move around in. But then you're also seeing these bigger studios reaching out to these indie filmmakers to try and court them to coming to where they are. I don't think it's just the indie filmmakers. Obviously, we have places like Sundance and Cannes where you're buying up smaller independent films by larger and larger companies seem to be going to it. So I just think there's a cross-pollination between a lot of these different things.
Quick bone to pick with that, though.
Sure.
And one of my hopes that we do see more mid-range films is so that filmmakers have the opportunity to evolve before they are thrown into a situation in which they maybe made one really, like Taika's made several films,
right.
And he's been working a long time, but maybe they made one independent film that was really relatively small and then quickly were thrust into a massive franchise, and several times we've seen that not work.
Colin Trevorrow had a tough
exactly what I was
year.
gonna say.
You know? I mean, I do feel for that person in the sense,
yeah.
I mean, hey, it's a great opportunity, but they didn't get the chance to grow because those films are so few and far between where they could grow.
Well, let's look at the Star Wars Han Solo movie that's going to be coming up. We had Phil Lord and Chris Miller were originally on it. Chris Lord, Phil Miller. And then they were sacked, for lack of a better term.
Phil Lord, Chris Miller, right?
Right, yeah.
Miller
Phil Lord, Chris
Miller and Lord, yeah.
Miller and Lord. We love them.
All those monosyllabic names are hard. I love them too. And I would have loved to see their Han Solo movie. I'm not exactly sure what happened in those meetings and why they were ushered out of the production. So now we have somebody like Ron Howard, who's obviously a proven filmmaker. But maybe they had a lot of credits. They did. But this was a huge opportunity for them, and they didn't mesh with that studio system that they were thrown into. I do agree with you. I do think that you sort of jump that middle step, and now you're one of the big dogs, and you may not be ready for all that entails. There's a lot of studio interference when you have one of these types of contracts working on one of these types of films, and I think that artistic vision can be detrimented by that because there's too much and you're not ready to push back, or you don't have the clout to push back. So I do think that's true. I also feel bad for them, as you do too. How do you say no to an opportunity?
I know,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Since we're jumping around, I kind of want to talk about something that was interesting about 2017 was, you had these quote unquote surefire hits, Transformers and Pirates, and they didn't fire at all. But then you had, a studio like A24 or Neon, who are Blumhouse is a great example, just throwing out so many options, and more often than not, they're getting a return on their investment. Do you think in 2018 we'll start to see kind of a shift where it's not just hedging all your bets on one big movie, but taking kind of that smaller example of, a Neon, A24, Blumhouse, and kind of divvying up your money on some lower risk projects?
I think Blumhouse should be an example for everyone in Hollywood right now. Jason Blum has the Midas touch. This was an astonishing year with what they were able to do. All of their movies are very, very low budget, and all of them had, if not unbelievable return on investment, like a movie like Get Out and Split, just good return on investment. Even a movie like Happy Death Day, which is a very small movie, had a very modest box office run, but still an enormous profit for them based on what they put into it and how little the investment is. Maybe it's because they're all horror, and horror kind of lends itself to that. But there's lessons to be learned from him, and he has really established himself as a massive player in Hollywood with this past year.
It's a question that our own Max Tion was asking the other day in terms of, it does seem, although they're making films like Whiplash as well, right? So they're willing to do dramas. But why don't we see more of that model applied to comedies? Is a question. I don't know. Do you have a take on that?
I don't off the top of my head. I feel like we used to see that a lot more. I feel like comedy across the board sort of seems to be hurting a little bit. This is odd to say because The Big Sick might go on to get an Oscar nomination.
Sure.
Dramedy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a pure comedy. There seems to be less comedies than there used to be, and they seem to be if there's not, they seem to not be registering with the public in the way they used to be.
Do you think that'll turn around in 2018? Like, is this the year of the comedy, or is comedy just kind of like a genre that needs to kind of lay low for a little bit and then have a big resurgence?
It makes you wonder, is it political times that we're living in? Or are we not as welcoming for laughs right now? I would argue that maybe this is the best time that we could have comedies. Anytime that there's social unrest, like maybe we need satire to point those things out for us.
But it is interesting, though, that you said that horror did so well this year,
right?
When there's so much unrest kind of, in society.
And there's sort of just two takes on the same thing, right? We can either lean into, I don't think horror is overly pessimistic, but I guess you could take that route that these are the worst things that could happen, especially a socially relevant horror movie, like Get Out.
Like Get Out, yeah.
But comedy should be able to do that too. I think there's a very fine line between comedy and horror, honestly, and I think Get Out's a perfect example of that. There's very humorous moments in that. I think maybe one of the scariest films I've seen in a really long time. I love that movie. Very, very funny, very, very touching, very much a coming-of-age story as well. I think that there's a blend that you can see between the two lines, but as far as just hardcore comedies the way we used to see them, when was the last Hangover that we had?
Yeah, I mean, Girls Trip this year was obviously a really successful straight comedy. Although it had a few little dramatic moments in there. But I wonder, too, if a lot of this is being folded into things like Thor Ragnarok, which is a very funny movie, or even Jumanji, which isn't marketed as a comedy, but it's got two comedians in it, two comedic actors in it, and it's very funny. I don't know. That's maybe it's just comedy's being spread around a little bit.
So do you see a genre that maybe will kind of dominate 2018, or even a new kind of hybrid?
It's hard to say. I think horror dominated 2017 in a big way, so it's hard to say that it will go away in 2018. But at the same time, how long can it keep up the steam that it has? So my chips, if I was a betting man, I'm from Nevada, so I guess I am. I would put those on horror. There were so many great horror movies in 2017. There's obviously an audience for it. Horror is kind of one of those genres that persists always. So I would guess horror. Personally, myself, I would love to see more comedies. I would love to see some good comedies and things that really take off in the zeitgeist that they used to. I feel I grew up on comedies. I think a lot of us did. And there seems to be less of them. Honestly, even off the top of my head, I think Girls Trip is the only one I can really remember from this year where I walked away like actually enjoying it fully.
Here's the final question on this topic, which has gone to many different places. If the Fox Disney deal does not go through, what do you think will happen there? Is it Comcast that will step in?
Yeah, I suppose you would imagine that somebody else is going to. Right? I'm putting so many eggs in the basket of it is going to happen. It seems like
it
everyone's kind of leaning that way.
Yeah.
They seem to be in like the last stages of that deal. So I almost can't even speculate because I'm so sure. It might have happened in the time that we were speaking just now. I'm not sure if my phone has been vibrating. But I guess, yeah. I mean, I think if it doesn't go through, then somebody else will step up.
Warner Brothers.
Oh, this is a
lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Let's move into this next. This next. Warner Brothers, I guess, could that be a studio that would then go and try and buy Paramount? Why would they need to, though? That's the whole question. There's my question for you. There's a lot of shakeup at Warner Brothers at the moment, obviously, following DC. So we'll focus there first, but percolate on the idea of, would Warner Brothers be one to then compete and take on one of the other studios if Disney and Fox, that deal does go through? So with the shakeups around DC at the moment, here's the main thing that I'm curious about. What is Jeff Johns specifically doing in that role? Like, is he now just sort of a consultant about comic books, but really doesn't have a huge role in the oversight of the films themselves?
I'm as confused as you are in this situation. I think that no one in that entire building expected things to go the way that they went in November when the film was released. November, it might have been December. Whenever Justice League hit
November,
theater. Yeah, it was November, okay. I don't think anyone expected it to not register as little as it did, because even BVS had Batman vs Superman registered and was a hit technically in terms of the money that it made. Suicide Squad was a hit. This movie was not a hit, and it's like reckoning there. So I don't know what his role is going forward, exactly what it is, because the nomenclature that they're using is kind of confusing to me.
Right?
Yeah. It's almost like they don't know yet and had to put out some sort of statement.
So do you think in 2018 that DC will finally be like Feige, here's our guy, here's where we're going? Or do you think we're going to get another year of just wild rumors that from a Leonardo DiCaprio Scorsese movie to 6 different Joker movies, do you think it's just going to be another year of rumors? Or do you think someone in 2018 will step up and be like, here's our roadmap, this is what we're doing?
I hope somebody steps up in that role. I think they need somebody like that to step up. I think they should look to Wonder Woman, their big success of 2017, and a success for all of box office and for film in general, and maybe start looking there and what made that a success, who was involved in making that such a success, and maybe start from there and try to build off of that base. Something worked, something clicked this year. It wasn't all bad. So focus on, I didn't even hate Justice League. It just was Justice League. Sorry.
That's a great review.
Yeah.
It's Justice League.
That's what it is. Batman's there. So they have good things. They do have good things. They also have the most popular heroes. There's nobody more popular than Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. You can't beat them. So it seems like you just have to have somebody to polish it. Sorry,
Sure.
Is that contentious?
No,
it's just, yeah, on paper, that's true.
Right?
But this whole year has proved not so much.
Otherwise, I mean, that's the thing, is that heroes that on paper and sort of from the lore are nowhere near as well known or as popular. And they've had years now to be established in the cinematic universe, have come in and beat them, financially.
Yeah, it's well, another thing too, like I said, is kind of just the unrest around the whole situation where no one knows, which is in 2018, will we finally know, is Ben Affleck going to be Batman or not? And if they know now, why can't they just say one way or another? It's been yes, no, I don't know, want to leave, never want to leave, maybe I'll leave. The whole year since Comic-Con, really, it's been a ping pong game.
Yeah, they're ringing us out. That's what they're doing. They know. They're just trying not to let us
Just stringing us along.
Ben Affleck doesn't know what the future of his Batman is. I'll ask you both the question. Do you like Ben Affleck as Batman?
I do. I liked him in BV. I do.
You're very classy.
I do declare that I do. But here's the thing where it gets a little complicated. I enjoyed him a lot as Batman in BVS. I thought it would be great to see him in the kind of movie that is it looks like they're developing for the Batman. But in some of his press appearances, he has seemed to be not entirely delighted. And so I guess at that point it's just like, well, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing for a person to take on. There's so much pressure from the studios, probably from your agents, certainly from the press, from the fans. It's a lot for a person to take on. And if they're not enjoying it, that seems like almost too much of a burden to ask him to do.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely get a sense that Henry Cavill is very proud to be Superman, whereas Ben Affleck, it's a job for him, and that's not bad. It just so happens that Batman carries this baggage and this responsibility that he's going to have to carry for years after this too. I mean, how many times do we look at Michael Keaton and it's like, oh, Batman's in this movie about Catholic priests? So,
and he was in the good Batman. Yeah, George Clooney, that guy.
But do you think 2018 will finally get this answer either way?
It has to, right? Because the entire future of whatever they're building kind of depends on that. He is the central figure, even more than Superman, honestly, at least for my generation. We grew up more with Batman than we did with Superman. So they need to figure that out. I think nobody owes anything to their fans. I think that's the wrong word to use.
Sure.
But it would be nice for us to know. And I like Ben Affleck as Batman.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying, it ain't easy to be Batman. I've never been Batman. I don't know what it's like, but I imagine it's not super easy.
It seems like a lot.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of pressure.
So I do. I feel for him. I don't know his personal feelings about the role. I imagine any actor who grew up in the last 60 years would be excited to be Batman when they got that role. I can't imagine not being excited to be Batman. But also, I think after a couple years of doing it and a couple not super well received movies, he might want to distance himself from it. I don't want to speak for Ben Affleck. I don't know, but I definitely can understand what you're saying.
The Matt Reeves, it's interesting because what Matt Reeves has described seems perfectly up his alley.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, do you think that the film that Matt Reeves thinks he's making is going to be the film that he gets to make? Well, is that what we will ultimately see? There's a prediction.
I can say I hope so.
Sure.
Matt Reeves is amazing, and his entire body of work speaks to how great he is. I also think that Ben Affleck he's good at the character. I think he makes a good Batman. I think he looks like Batman. I think he speaks like Batman. I think he has the Batman chin, which only so many of us can be born with. That's the hardest part of the character.
I think I have the egghead chin. I was not blessed with.
I wasn't saying that I had the Batman chin. That was not my takeaway. So with Matt Reeves, you're looking for a Batman. But yeah, I think that he fits in with Matt Reeves. I think Ben Affleck is also a filmmaker, and at one point he was in talks to make the Batman. So maybe there's butting heads there because Ben Affleck has already proven himself as a filmmaker. He has an Oscar. Matt Reeves doesn't have a Best Director Oscar. He doesn't have a Best Picture Oscar. Yes, and he should. But yeah, so I do think that if I was Matt Reeves, and as long as I don't know what their relationship would be like on set, but I don't know why I wouldn't want Ben Affleck in that role. He's one of the biggest stars on the planet. He's proven that he can play this character. I think that whatever they're working on, they seem to me, on paper at least, that they would mesh. So I would work forward with having Ben Affleck as my Batman if I was Matt Reeves.
It's interesting, though, because with these shakeups, with the dissolution of the dark universe, perhaps it feels like and do you think that in 2018 what we're looking at is kind of the collapse of the attempt to make everything into a united cinematic universe and instead have the opportunity to do very focused individual films, even in a place like for films like DC, in which they are inherently connected. They don't have to be.
Right. Well, okay, this sounds so negative, but like, I don't know who asked for cinematic universes. Is that something that we all wanted? I don't remember filling that out. A cinematic universe is different than like a trilogy, like the Dark Knight trilogy. Like that's just 3 movies. They weren't interconnected with like whatever the Superman Returns was that came out in that same time period. And they were better because of it. It was one auteur's direction and his vision that entire time, and that was great. Same with Lord of the Rings trilogy, things like that. I don't need everything to be a gigantic universe. I don't want to feel like I have to do homework before I go into any particular movie. At this point with the MCU, even though they all work standalone, they're much better if you've seen them all. And if you haven't started yet, you have to sit down for 72 hours to watch 17 movies and take notes as you're doing it. So
well, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or just watch.
You can watch our new series called Cram It.
Long didn't watch. Yeah, Cram It. Sorry.
Cram It. Yeah.
Cram It is our new series.
That is a wonderful, wonderful name for something.
Just Cram It.
I don't think cinematic universes need to exist at the level that they are. I think it is beyond impressive what Marvel did, and I commend them. And they are unbelievable what they were able to accomplish. It is truly staggering, and nobody's ever done it before. At the same time, to look at that and just think you can hop right into it, the arrogance of a decision like that is staggering to me. It'd be like if I walked into the Sistine Chapel and looked up at it, and because I doodled in my art class, I thought I would be able to draw Michelangelo touching God's finger. I can't do it, and it takes a lot of years of practice to be able to do that, and the legwork. You want all the payoff without any of the work that's involved in the payoff. You can't just say it's a universe and attach very well-known, very respected actors with very well-respected and well-known IP like the Dark Universe. I want that to work. I do. There's no reason for me not to. I love those characters. I love all the actors that they pick. But I'm not just going to buy into your universe. You need to at least prove to me that you made one movie that I want to see. Or probably like 5 movies.
Probably, yeah. You have to get a little deeper in before you get. So, are we looking at the end of it, people? What do you think? End of the cinematic universe era?
Are we doing like a Roman?
What do you think?
I hope so.
Nice.
I don't know.
Do I think they'll still try?
I think they're gonna.
Sure
absolutely.
I think there's over at Sony gonna be an attempt with those Spider-Man villains. That's what I think. So I don't think we're totally through it yet. But close. Much closer.
I think 2018 might be the start of like, let's not put all of our eggs in that basket because it's not panning out like they want it to. I hope DC is the first one that says, we'll do some movies where, he knows who Aquaman is, and there might be a thing, but for the most part, like, if this doesn't fit, like, sure, do a Superman Red Sun, do a Gotham by Gaslight, if that's the movie you want to make.
Right. As what you just said is great. Why not do like a very light universe? Like you can like, you can technically put them together, but they don't have to.
So DCU stands for Diet Cinematic Universe?
That is exactly what I'm saying, yes. Diet Coke's the best Coke.
Diet Cinematic Universe. Streaming.
Let's go back to streaming.
Let's talk about streaming.
Because we went through it a little bit, but I mean, to be honest, streaming is kind of, if you ask me what my favorite movies were this year, I'd say Master of None Season 2 and Stranger Things 2. I feel like streaming has just become such a big thing that maybe we didn't even think would be this alternative form of entertainment. So now that Apple is saying we want to get in this race, what do you think their chances are? What do you think that they can offer? Because, anytime someone says we're starting a streaming service, you're like, well, I have Netflix, I have Hulu, I have Amazon.
Right.
I'm not paying for anything else. What can Apple do? What do they have in their inventory, in their sleeve that they can do to enter this race, this crazy race?
Well, Apple has more money than everybody else in the world. So that's what they have. I think they're number 3 on the Fortune 500 or something like that. So they have the opportunity, not that they would do this, though there is speculation that they might. They could just go and buy Netflix.
Right?
Yeah.
That's literally one of our questions on here.
But why?
Do you think they would?
Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Exactly. That's my question. Why
Well,
not?
is it a matter of Apple is so notorious about wanting to own every piece of everything they have? And as we've kind of painfully learned in the last couple of years, Netflix licenses a lot of things, but they don't own their content. Do you think that Apple, if they get into this race, is going to find themselves in a place where they want to develop it, make it, distribute it, own it every step of the way like they do with their products?
I think they probably want that. I think whatever those negotiations are, I would imagine the people at Netflix would push back against that. I think that they also are in the position where they can say, Apple, you do amazing things at Apple and you lead the world in so many things. This is not one of the things that you lead in. And you tried with Apple TV and it's not working as well as its competitors. Roku outsells Apple TV and Apple TV has kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. So if I was Netflix, if I was at that table, first off, I would have a lot more money and I'd be wearing a better shirt. And then second off, I would tell them that I know how this business works. We made this business.
Yeah.
So it would benefit you to listen to us in this situation. We know how streaming works. And if they were able to find a middle ground between them, I think that would be something to look out for if you were anyone else. If you combine with Netflix's know-how of streaming services with the deep, deep pockets of Apple, how do you stop them? Even Disney and Fox can't stop that.
Exactly. Now we have a fight, people. This is a giant monster robot fight, right?
Yeah, this is Godzilla versus King Kong.
Exactly.
But is this good or bad for us this coming year? Is this good for me as a consumer, or am I going to get to a place where it's like, just figure this out, guys, so I have one app and that's the best? Or does this competition benefit me?
I don't know the answer to that question. I guess I would hope it would benefit me. If anything can cut down, this is awful. I don't want any of these places to shut down.
Yeah.
Sure.
People work there. But I can't pay $8 for one thing and $8 for another thing. I still have cable too, and I love cable. I feel like I'm the only person my age who loves cable, but I like cable, and I don't want to lose it. So I don't know. I just wish it was more streamlined, or these people could. I don't know why it broke out in so many ways, and we have so much content spread over so many things. I have to buy so many subscriptions every month.
Yeah.
I just wish. I don't know how it could do this unless one company owns it all, and I'm not hoping for a monopoly. I just wish it was a little bit more streamlined, or they were different somehow. I don't need they're basically just turning into television stations.
Let me explain my mixed feelings as a consumer. We are in a golden age of television, and I contend that one of the reasons that we're in a golden age of television is because we have all of this competition going on in places that have relied heavily on television, including on cable, with the advent of like niche networks, and then with the addition of streaming. We have gotten some brilliant television over the years thanks to those things. And even Netflix and cable have intersected in that way, because if you think of something like Breaking Bad, it did not get very high ratings initially. People then binged it on Netflix, caught up, realized it was a brilliant show. The ratings went up. That allowed people to creatively invest a little more and think, hey, maybe even if they're not so tuned in the first season, they will in the future. My point is this. The competition has been really wonderful creatively. It has given us beautiful television. At the same time, as a consumer, it's my job to keep on top of all of these things. So I am currently subscribed to more services than I can even keep track of. So I don't know what's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Because if I'm Apple, I know I can outspend literally the world.
Sure.
And I'm just going to buy Netflix for the brand name and their expertise. I'm going to ride out the licensing deals, then own and operate my content the way that they didn't do with iTunes, and then just go try it, Disney. But is that, for me as the consumer, am I going to continue to get the golden age of television that I'm currently in?
See, I'm not against competition at all. I agree with you completely. I think that competition breeds some of the best things that we see, and we are absolutely, objectively in a golden age of television. Television, in some ways, there's telling far more fascinating stories than a lot of movies are. So it's a great time to be a television watcher. At the same time, the other edge of that sword is I can't watch it all. There's way too much. And not only that, I mean, I have to pay multiple services just to watch one show, perhaps. Like, what won at the Emmys this year was The Handmaid's Tale. Mm-hmm. The only reason I have it now, but at the time, I bought a subscription just to watch that show because I did not have Hulu
right?
beforehand. Yeah, exactly. So it's hard for me as a consumer because I have limited funds and limited time more even so than funds at times. And there's too many things for me to watch. So I love the competition. I love what we're all seeing. But at a certain point, there's too much. And do I care a little bit less at that point? The next great show that's coming out, well, it's 10 shows down on my list of amazing shows that I need to watch. So I may never even get to it. So why would I pay for that?
Where do you think it's going?
Well, I think this is kind of like a good bookend topic because now we're talking about VOD and the theatrical window. We've kind of discussed how streaming has become such a big part of our lives, and we've talked about how just movies in general are changing. What do you see evolving or changing in terms of here is a movie? Because right now we have this stigma, if a movie comes out in the theater and on VOD the same day, it's probably a crap movie or it's not worth my time. But do you see that changing? Do you see a movie being released on multiple platforms on the same day? Could we see the first real blockbuster day and date on multiple platforms, home and theatrical?
Yeah, I think you absolutely can. I think a couple years ago with Beasts of No Nation, which wasn't a blockbuster film, but it was a good film. It was a good film. And that was... I can't remember exactly how it was supposed to be released on the same day in theaters and Netflix, but I think it actually released on Netflix like a day or so before it hit theaters. And I watched it at home instead of going to the theater. I'm going to argue a point that is actually antithetical to what I think personally, because I understand it more that way. I love the theater. I love going to the theater. I love it just so I can not look at my phone and there are no distractions. I have to watch that story for 2 hours. Yes. I think that's the best way to experience that type of art. That said, I have a big TV in my house, and I actually, I don't have to worry about somebody next to me. I don't have to spend $50 if I want a thing of popcorn and a hot dog to see this movie. Hot dog. I don't know why I said it like that.
I do a hot dog.
Hot dog, just crushing a hot dog.
So I understand that. I hope not that theaters are getting phased out, but I do understand the appeal of staying home and watching something. If I can watch something for free at home, why would I pay to go and see a movie? I would personally because I love that experience, but I can't tell other people to do that. And I think that the window is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. I think, honestly, in 2018, we will see that. That's my answer to that question. If not then very early 2019. I think we're very close to that.
And then does it become, because we have all of these different factors in terms of Disney demanded more from the theater, 65% for Star Wars. We have then on the other side something like Movie Pass, in which I can pay $10 a month and go to see as many movies as I want right now. And we have this drive towards collapsing release times between VOD and the theatrical experience. So to me, it seems like it's haywire. Are we either going to set up an expectation of far cheaper ticket prices for movies, in which case it sort of just drives them out of business ultimately, or does it become a rarefied experience the way that plays currently are?
I mean, Are plays making lots of money? That's the question.
Hamilton.
I mean, Hamilton.
Hamilton,
If you're Hamilton, you are.
That's some Hamilton money.
I was an English major and I studied theater when I was in college, so I also have a soft spot for plays. I very much enjoy the theater, and it is for me like it is for a lot of people that go out. It's an experience. It is. It's a high ticket experience where you get dressed up, and it should be like that to go out. I don't remember if I was a kid. A little bit of that going to movie theaters too. Not like I'm like 70 and go to the picture show. But it was a going out experience. I miss that aspect. I really hope never goes away because movies are supposed to be a special thing. It's why even as actors, when you would aspire to be a movie star as opposed to a television star, because it was a different thing. And you look at the stars different. You know, I'm going to see you as opposed to you coming into my home. And I think that movies still have that special thing to me, and I hope that never goes away. It's just hard for me to not feel like an old fuddy-duddy when I say stuff like that. Because if I was 12 and my movie-going experiences were, some guy threw popcorn in my head, or like I couldn't hear the movie at this certain time, or people were on their cell phone, which is an enormous issue. Why would I do that when I could just stay home and watch it on my massive entertainment center and pause the movie whenever I wanted to? It's hard to argue against that other than to me it feels special. And I hope it feels special to other people. I know it does. Yeah. But is that enough to keep it going?
I don't know, because if you were 12, you might largely be watching your entertainment right here on YouTube.
As you should be.
And we hope that you are. We hope that that's how you are enjoying us right now. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where can the people find you? Do you go on the social medias? Do you like the social medias?
Yes. I'm on a social media. I'm not sure how many social medias I'm on. I'm at Twitter. I'm not sure what camera I'm looking at this one. My handle is pshanley88. I write for the Hollywood Reporter, so you can find me there. I guess those are the two places to track me down.
Very well. We'll also have your home address in the description.
Right. I like muffins. It's getting close to Christmas.
If anybody just wants to drop by and say what's up. Thank you so much again for joining us today. This has been a marathon of 2018 predictions, but man, I love talking about this stuff. Thank you, Billy. Always
2018, it's Infinity War.
Yeah.
Infinity
War.
The answer to everything is Infinity War.
Exactly.
Yep.
Hashtag Infinity War. Woo. Thank you guys for joining us. Let us know what you think in the comments below. What can we expect out of 2018? I'm choosing optimism. Optimism. Be nice to each other.